Tri-Point Conversations, and I'm your host, Christina Lowe. And today I'm sitting down with Jimmy Burroughes, a former British Army officer, corporate general manager, and founder of JBL High Performance. Jimmy has led teams under pressure, worked with thousands of leaders around the world, and experienced burnout in his own life. That combination has led him to develop Simplify to Amplify, a leadership approach built around a simple idea. Most capable leaders do not need more training or more things added to their plates. They need to identify and remove the friction keeping them and their teams from performing at their best. So today we're going to talk about how leaders become the bottleneck, why firefighting can feel productive even when it isn't, and what we can do to lead better without simply working harder. Jimmy, welcome to Tri-Point Conversations.
Thanks, Christina. So wonderful to be here.
So I want to get started before JBL High Performance. What made you want to join the British Army, and what did you learn about yourself once you were responsible for leading other people?
Oh goodness, that's a hard question. The flippant answer would be I didn't know what else to do with my life when I finished university. But there's probably a bit more to it than that. If I rewind the clock to my school days, one of the things that we had to do in our school was Army cadets or RAF cadets or something along those lines. So essentially like Boy Scouts in uniform or like a junior ROTC. And during the course of that period of my life, I realized I was quite good at it. So it was lots of running around, lots of exercise, lots of structure, lots of frameworks, lots of organization, physicality and mentally is challenging. And so when I was sort of in my last year of university, I thought, do you know what? Actually, I could go back to that. I really enjoyed that part of my life. And so I could get paid to do this now. It's amazing. So I joined the ROTC or the equivalent in the UK. And that sort of eased my way into being an army officer. After a year of training at Sandhurst, you commission, and I ended up essentially on the front lines in Iraq. It was my first job out of university was Gulf War II. So
Wow.
I'm showing my age a little bit now, but as a fresh-faced 23-year-old, Gulf War II came calling. And you ask, what did I learn about myself when I was put in charge of leading people? So much. First of all, how little I knew about leadership. There's a never-ending lesson, a never-ending teacher, should I say, being in the service of other people when you're leading them. But also, I think, some really practical, valuable lessons, and I can share a couple of those. The first one, if I think about that first job, I was 23 years old. I didn't really know anything about anything except how to be an army officer, which is essentially how to give a set of orders, how to sell a plan, and how to administrate your soldiers. And so what they do is they partner you with a senior non-commissioned soldier. So they're generally sort of sergeant or above. And through each of the sort of formative years of your career, you're always partnered with a senior soldier. And that senior soldier has, 10 to 15 years experience doing whatever it is that your part of the army does. So my part was logistics. So I had a staff sergeant and I had a sergeant, and they were experts in their field. There wasn't anything they didn't know about delivery of trucks and maintenance and planning and convoys and hiding trucks in forests. And there was nothing they didn't know. So yeah, you end up with this senior soldier or a couple of senior soldiers who are partnered with you. And I guess the breakthrough moment for me was my staff sergeant saying, boss, your job is to make decisions. Our job is to give you the information to make those decisions. And so what would happen is we would get together in the planning phase of an operation, and we bring in the sergeants and sometimes the corporals who are the next layer down, and say, we've got to move from point A to point B, or we've got to do drive-through supermarket in the desert somewhere. And my thinking is this: what do we all think? And there's we would get feedback, that we use that route too often. We've been down that road and there was a mind strike. We haven't been this way for a while. Let's try that. And gradually between sort of the five of us, we would put together a plan. And then my job would be to essentially assimilate that and say, okay, based on what I've heard, this is what we're going to do. Is everybody in agreement? Yes or no? And refine until the point where we had a plan that we could take out to all the soldiers, and I would do the briefing. But to all intents and purposes, it looks like I was the one that came up with the plan because I'm the one doing the briefing. But the reality was I was leveraging the expertise of those people around me
Mm-hmm.
who knew how to do the job. And my job was to decide and sell the plan. And I think it's probably one of the most valuable leadership lessons that most people don't learn.
Mm-hmm.
They think that they see the latter bit, which is I have to have the answers, I have to have the plan, I have to know how to do this, and I have to sell it. Versus the reality in your job as a leader, which is pull the right people into the room,
Mm-hmm.
hammer out an idea, and assimilate your concepts into a workable plan. That has massive consequences in terms of you've got everybody on board now who's important in implementing it. You build trust with those people because you're asking their opinion and you're taking on board what they say and you're using and leveraging their experience. But also takes a tremendous amount of weight off your own shoulders because
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to come up with all the bright ideas.
Yeah.
How many times have you as a leader gone, oh my God, how am I going to solve this one? And you just, if you were to sit 3 or 4 people down in a room and go, here's the problem, what do we think? Somebody is going to have a couple of ideas. And I like to sort of use the idea of there are no bad ideas. There's just inappropriate timing for good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so chances are somebody's going to say something and you go, yeah, but kind of let's change it to this. And then you get your breakthrough moment and then everybody's on board with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably one of the greatest leadership lessons I ever learned was you don't have to be the expert when you're a leader. You need to be great at pulling experts together to solve problems.
So that's a great lesson from the military that you applied into business. Was there something that you had to unlearn when you're moving from the military into the corporate world?
Oh yeah, so
Yeah.
much. If I think about one of the things that the military does very, very well is gives clarity to individuals on what's the plan, what's your role in that plan, and how are you expected to deliver that? And
Mm-hmm.
generally, it's done through intent-based leadership. So my intent is that we're going to go and set up a supermarket in the desert over here. Your job is to get on with that and make it happen. And here's some guidelines around how to do that. And it's relatively specific. And everybody's on board in the military. We're all there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so generally that reason is defending your country, defending your queen or king, defending your mates. Whatever it might be, everybody has a sort of singular motive. And so for me, often when you go into hairy moments, you're going because your mates are going, and because you've been told to, but you fight for your friends. When I got to the corporate workplace, I realized pretty quickly that didn't exist in the corporate workplace. There's far more personal agendaizing and people doing things because they think it'll be of personal gain versus a singular focus on clarity of purpose. And so, did I unlearn it? No, I think I had to adapt very rapidly to the way you can't. In the corporate workplace, you can't sit everybody down and brief for 2 hours on how we're going to do this product launch strategy, or how are we going to deal with customer service today. You can't pull people into war room sessions and rehearse things. So that kind of change of approach for what's a really good way that I can make sure everybody in my team understands what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, what their role is in it, and how what the expected outcomes are without doing it in the army way. So that took a little bit of refinement over a few years, and now it's something we teach. But I think that kind of unlearning the military briefing system and learning the civvy way was a really interesting journey to try and maintain that clarity of purpose, because we see it in so many organizations. People don't really know why they're doing things and the difference it's making and how to do them. They're just doing things.
Yeah. So then from the military, you went on to lead within major organizations, but in 2017, you experienced burnout that affected your career and your relationship and your home. And from the outside, did you still look successful while that was happening, or what did that look like during that time?
It was pretty messy.
Mhm.
I'll be honest. I think within the space of 6 weeks, I finished an MBA. I resigned from my GM role. I got divorced. I packed up pretty much everything I owned in a couple of suitcases after I'd sold everything. I moved into a flat, and then I moved back in with my parents. So it was not pretty.
Hmm.
I don't think to anybody I looked successful. I was very overweight. I was drinking too much. I was in a pretty bad state. And it took me probably, a good few months to work through that process from,
Hmm.
from a variety of angles. Uh, would I go through it again? Possibly not want to go through that again, but was it a learning experience? Absolutely.
Hmm.
Um, I think one of the biggest insights I had during that period was, how did I do this to myself? Especially the burnout thing. Unfortunately, relationships often end, and you have to move out, and you have to renegotiate your living circumstances. But from a burnout perspective, it's very easy to blame your workplace. And I think initially I was like, oh, they destroyed me, they burned me out. And
Hmm.
the realization during that period of reflection and recovery was, well, how did I do that to myself? What did I give away in terms of my energy levels, my soul, my heart, that caused this? And once I had that breakthrough, that formed a lot of the basis of the work we do now, in terms of how not to let that happen and how to be aware if it might be happening to you,
Hmm.
what to look for, those really practical steps of, am I going down that track as well? That was, I think, probably the silver lining to the grey cloud. But no, from the outside, I think I look like a train wreck. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But interestingly, within 6 months, I was healthier, fitter, and better
Hmm.
than I'd been in over a decade.
Hmm.
So I came back, but the initial stages were pretty rough. Yeah.
And during that period, did that experience change your definition of high performance?
Yes, absolutely. Um, it's one of the activities actually we do with leaders in one of the first sessions that we ever, when we partner with organizations, is we define what success looks like for
Hmm.
you and how you're measuring it. And if I give you a specific example around my own life, when I was in the corporate workplace, my singular focus was to be the CEO of an organization, and I was kind of fast tracking myself on the way to get there. So I was a GM at 35. Um, and was hoping to be on the executive table by 40, and a CEO by 42, 43. So I was pushing really hard to get there because I thought, when I'm the CEO, I can have enough influence to make a positive difference to the most possible people, and then that'll lead me to feeling satisfied in the work I do, and I'll feel successful. It's very extrinsic motivations, really.
Hmm.
But when I discovered this kind of idea of life by design, when I was in my recovery phase after my burnout, I completely threw that out the window. Ironically, now I'm the CEO of an organization that helps large organizations all over the world. So blah blah.
Yeah.
But the reality is, my definition of success today is: do I need to work today, or can I hang out with my daughter? Am I available for family events?
Hmm.
Do I have time to exercise? Can I cook lunch for the family today? They're my definitions of success, and they're far more built around freedom and choice of what I do and where I spend my energy versus the grind. And don't
Hmm.
get me wrong, I still work really hard and I still put a lot of effort in. And you often find me working till 2, 3, 4 in the morning to finish something or to get something done. But equally, just before I came on the call with you, I was making a casserole because I
Hmm.
wanted to make something nice today. So, they're the kind of the flexibility things that I think are really important that I learned. What high performance is. High performance is whatever you decide it is for
Hmm.
you based on your measures of success. The honesty comes from really defining what does success mean to you. One of my good friends, his measure of success is how many times a week does he surf. He
Hmm.
runs a $15 million business. So he's an entrepreneur and he's got a great organization with a great team around him. But his high performance is: did I do well on the waves today, and did I get to
Hmm.
surf 3 or 4 times this week? Not how much money's in my bank account.
Yeah. You also use the term performance friction. What does that mean in kind of everyday language?
Now I have to ask a question: are you from the north or south of the Mason-Dixon line?
From the South.
From the south. Okay. So if you imagine a circumstance where the managers in your organization, they're pretty capable, smart, determined people, and they're trying to do their best, but they're swimming through molasses. They're working as hard as they can, but they're not really going anywhere, and the system's set up to make them fail. So all that's happening is lots of energy is being expended for not a lot of gain. And this, unfortunately, is the situation in nearly every organization we see, to a varying degree. But you have things like lack of clear priorities. What are our priorities? What are we working for? We have a lack of psychological safety and trust in organizations. We have a lack of leadership capability in organizations because we're investing in poor training that doesn't have an ROI, doesn't change anything. So this performance friction is the molasses, is the stuff that's slowing you down from doing a great job. And what we generally find when we work with organizations is once you fix the friction, everything starts to get better. So we have a diagnostic process that we go through, and we identify. We've got 42 friction points that we've identified over the last 10 or so years, and generally every organization has 10 to 15 of those, and nearly every organization has about 5 or 6 of them. So, and they're fairly common. The one that comes up just about every time is where do I put my energy and time when everything is urgent and important? It's a really tough, it's a point of friction, right? If you've got everything seems really urgent and important, either we've got a categorization problem or we've got too many things going on. So you solve that, and these capable, smart, determined people pick up momentum. And what we see is if we solve a couple of the friction points, everything else starts to speed up. It's almost like a sort of dragnet effect. You've got to precisely target the things that are getting in the way. And then the people who are swim like Olympic rock stars. They're suddenly delivering exponentially better performance for the business. And to put that into context, we're talking 40% improvement in productivity. We're talking 15% reduction in escalations coming up to the executive, because people have the confidence and the capability and the knowledge and the authority to solve stuff themselves. But they know what they're solving and why. We're talking about increased levels of employee engagement. We're talking about significant changes to a business that deliver bottom line results. And that's, let's face it, the reality of why we're doing what we're doing. We want businesses to be higher performing by making more money, but also higher performing, filled with happier, more content, more engaged employees who enjoy what they do and love the work that they're involved in.
So, when you work with organizations and people are categorizing and identifying, are you seeing where it is mostly bottlenecks pointing to leaders or executives in the organizations, or more systems within the organizations?
Yes, and both, I would say. Most of the work we do is people focused. So we're generally looking at where are the issues in the way people are being led. And specifically, we tend to focus on mid-level managers and up. So these are people who are leading managers and are struggling to get out of the tactical and into the strategic. So their GMs, so their SVPs, so their executive team doesn't have to keep coming down and rolling their sleeves up and getting stuck in. These are people who can actually move from being the principal violinist to being the conductor of the orchestra. And that's a really hard change for most people to make. And in fact, if you look at the statistics, more than 50% of leaders never make that shift. They never get there. So we're specifically targeting those people. We think they're the biggest enabler or untapped potential in any business. And if we think about this in terms of context, your executive team is, I don't know, let's say 10 to 15 people, or 5 to 15 people, depending on the size of your organization. And they're busy leading the organization, but occasionally they have to jump in and save the day. And then there's probably, 30 to 100 mid-level managers in an organization who have the rest of the organization reporting to them. And they're really struggling. And so because they're really struggling, the people below them have a lack of clarity. So they're unable to provide clarity. So the people below them have a lack of clarity. And it's kind of this cascade effect. And so the methodology that we use, which is Simplify to Amplify, works on giving these mid-level leaders the ability to see where is the friction, to solve that friction with a playbook, which essentially is a one-page thinking framework designed around simplicity. and then to scale it. So they become the pebble in the pond that ripples out, hey, let's all adopt this methodology to solve this point of friction across the organization. Let's ripple that out. And lo and behold, everybody suddenly becomes clearer on what they're meant to be doing and why and how. And communication starts to improve and all of the side effects that I mentioned a few minutes ago around engagement and all those things. But the goal here is, if you target that manager of manager level, they can single-handedly shift the performance of the business, because they're the ones that are really running the business on a day-to-day. They're the ones that get stuck in the operation. The exec are almost a little bit divorced from that quite frequently, and not doing an executive role. They're doing a senior management role because the operational leaders are so consumed with the tactical stuff.
So, walking through this process, will that then help leaders identify if they're being helpful versus being the bottleneck?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We every leader who starts in a program with us goes through essentially a bottleneck assessment,
hmm
and we categorize them into one of three layers. Are you what we call a village fisherman, the bottleneck? Are you the icebreaker leader, or are you the amplify leader? And each of them has a sort of set of criteria. And if anybody's listening and wants to go and have a go at the assessment, you can actually go to our website and do it for free. So you just go to jblhighperformance.com/assessment and choose the Am I the Bottleneck assessment? And it'll give you a full report on what it says. Basically, it takes 5 minutes, but it gives you this report that goes, oh yeah, actually, I didn't realize I was doing that, but here's an honest read on my habits. Here's what I'm up to. And so once you've got awareness of where some of those habits are, and once we start to shine a light on how some of those habits are causing your burnout, causing you to be overworked, causing you to be exhausted all the time, causing you never to be able to get to the work that you know you should be doing, but you're so busy putting fires out that you can't, never being able to take a weekend off, having to work through the nights. Once you realize that about yourself, we start to then tackle the beliefs. Why is that important for you? And let's start to shift your definition of what high performance looks like and success looks like. And then we give you the playbooks on, okay, so how do I actually do that? But it's a process that's heavily based in neuroscience, but you'd never know from the outside. It just looks like common sense. We go, well, why would you do that to yourself if you could do it like this, and it'd be much easier for you and you get better results? Like, should we give that a go? And then we help you to do that over a period of time.
So, you have a self assessment. I can imagine some people listening are asking, do you have an anonymous option to send it to someone to help them
Yes.
realize? Yeah.
Well, you can. So the bottleneck assessment, you can do it, and you can send it to your team, and you can send it to anybody you want. Send it to your granny if you want. If you're more interested in the team assessment, we also have one of those for free in the same page. But I think that bottleneck assessment, given the topic of our conversation, is a really great place to start. And yes, absolutely. Send it to your boss and see if they're the bottleneck. Send it to the manager that you see struggling in your organization and say, hey, have a look at this. The other advantage is it comes with an AI coaching platform that will help actually coach you through some of those habits. So you get the benefit of that as well.
Yeah. So the methodology is called Simplify to Amplify. Why do you think capable leaders keep making work more complicated than it needs to be?
Well, we're human beings, aren't we? We love to make things complicated for a variety of reasons. I think probably the most prevalent one I see is, if it's easy, people don't value it. Like if we make things look really simple, then there's a subconscious suspicion that can't be hard. And if you're not solving hard problems, then you don't deserve the big bucks. You don't deserve the big job. You don't deserve the accolades. And so what we do is we love to overcomplicate things. And the world of HR is notorious for this. We create these complex frameworks and these terms for basically just doing good leadership stuff. We have capability frameworks, and we have values and behaviors and belief systems and power skills, and we just overcomplicate everything. And we've tried to take that the exact opposite way. Everything we share fits onto one page per playbook. Literally, we have a toolkit which is 42 tools. You get access to all of them, but you only need about 5 of them, and they all fit on one page. And you can remember them. They're like ABC 1, 2, 3. They're very easy. Because simplicity is what works when you're under fire. And I learned this in the military. when the bullets and the bombs start flying, I don't have time to pull out my notebook and go, so what was that 17-step process I have to do now? I need
Yeah.
like 1, 2, 3. Here's what we do. And the same thing happens when our leaders are under pressure in organizations all the time. It's like being in battle nonstop. Stress is high, amygdala is firing, prefrontal cortex is under pressure. We're in an emotional response state. And so we need something that we can just tap into that works on autopilot. So the idea here is simplify as much as possible to make it work. The other piece I think here is the goal of the work that we do is it is scalable. So it should be something that they can ripple out without too much effort to go. We don't want to go through complex change management processes and adding a whole lot of burden to a leader's day to be able to share something. It should be something they could stick in, on their phone, draw it on a whiteboard in front of their team in 5 minutes. Somebody goes, oh yeah, I get that. Okay,
Yeah.
let's do that. That's our goal. I'm not sure if I answered your question now. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I think so. Yeah. And also your framework has 3 different parts, the see, solve, and scale. Can you
Correct.
walk us through those using examples of how a leader or team that is stuck would use these?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's use the communications within a team and up to my boss on what I'm working on. So often our boss doesn't know what we're working on, doesn't appreciate what we're working on, our workload, and also is throwing random priorities at us all the time. So the C here is the friction. I see that my boss doesn't really have a clue what I'm working on. I'm so busy. I also see that I'm not getting the credit for the hard work that I'm doing. And I see that my team aren't really getting any recognition for their hard work. So the solve is we use a framework called 3x3x3. It's exactly as it says on the tin. It's 3 bullet points, 3 bullet points, and 3 bullet points. The first 3 bullet points are what's the biggest 3 things or the most important 3 things I have achieved this week and their impact on the business. So I'm saying activity and impact. Very important we have both because activity on its own is just stuff.
Yes.
Impact is you starting to think strategically and your boss seeing you start to think strategically. So what's the 3 most important things I achieved this week and the impact on their business? The second 3 is what are my 3 big priorities for next week and their impact on the business. So for example, I'm going to be working on the new product rollout strategy. The reason being, we want to have this ready to give to the sales team so they can start using it in the field. So one line, but your boss gets to see what you're planning on working on next week. And then the third piece is 3 things I need from you and the impact they'll have. So I know I need sign off on that contract. I need a decision on whether we can do the offsite. I need some more information about this client that you used to work with when you were in my role. Whatever it is, you put those there. It's very simple, right? 3 by 3 by 3. It has all of these magical effects when you start to do it. So number 1, you've got to distill down to 3 bullet points, the most important things you did. So all of a sudden, if they're the 3 most important things, that's where your energy should have gone that week. And the impact on the business is you having a real view on strategic outcomes, not on tactical activity. Your boss gets to see what you're working on and the importance of it. And also gets to see if you're working on unimportant stuff. Because if you keep saying, this week I restocked the stationery cupboard and I organized a great morning tea. Your boss is going to say, well, hold on, you're ahead of. What are you doing? You're working below your salary level. You're working below your skill level. So let's have a conversation about that. Equally, what am I working on next week? Your boss gets to see and anticipate your priorities. So they might come back to you and say, oh, Christina, actually, I see you're going to be working on those 3. Maybe we could switch that one out for this one because this is more important. So we get an alignment activity going on. Also, your boss gets to see something that keeps coming up every week. Next week, I'm still trying to solve the product strategy. Next week, I'm still trying to solve the product strategy. And your boss can say, look, what's going on? Do you need some help there? Can I support you? Why are you stuck? What's the blocker here? But they get visibility of that. So if it hasn't made it into your help needed section, your boss can see that information as it's repeating. And so if you've got performance issues or lack of motivation, that also starts to bubble up. And then the third piece is what do I need help on? Your boss now feels valuable.
Hmm.
Your boss sees where you're struggling and where your developmental gaps are. They also see if you're asking for help for important stuff or unimportant stuff. So your boss immediately you raise your game, and your boss raises their game by supporting you in the right areas because you've asked for that support, as opposed to I never get the chance to, our one-on-ones always get cancelled and I just get like 5 minutes with my boss in the corridor. I never get my questions answered. My emails are ignored. Well, I need these three things delivered. Otherwise, I
Hmm.
can't move forward. And if the lack of sign-off, agreement, help is not forthcoming, it's probably going to be on your list next week. So your boss gets to see that.
Hmm.
What we also do is then we recommend the scale, which is okay. Well, in order for me to deliver this to my boss every week, I'd like my team to do a 3x3x3 every week. And I've got a great example of how to make this simple, because emails are boring, right? Nobody likes long emails, especially bullet point emails are the worst thing in the world.
Hmm.
So I worked with an executive team of an entrepreneurial startup. I think there are about 50 odd people. And every Friday, the CEO had everybody send him a WhatsApp voice message with their 3x3x3. And he was crazy mad about Peloton. I think it's called
Hmm.
Peloton. It's that
Yeah.
exercise bike thing. And so he would spend 2 hours every day on the Peloton, riding through the Alps or wherever he wanted to go. But on a Friday, his Peloton session was listening to his leadership team's 3x3s and responding to them all. So he would say, keep your 3x3 to a minute, 90
Hmm.
seconds max. And everything you need from me will be back with you by the end of Friday. So you've got then the weekend to reflect, think about it, and next week you're empowered and ready to go. And so within, his 2 hour cycle, he could probably get through, I think he had 9 or 10 direct reports from various different parts of the business. And he could get through all of those in half an hour. He would think about them and then he would fire off his responses. So within an hour, that whole process was done whilst he was
Yeah.
doing something else. And because he didn't want to do the emails, he was doing it by voicemail. But it's the same principle, right? It's the context was challenged, and he shifted his approach. And so all of the playbooks that we've got aren't like a rigid structure that you
Yeah.
have to do it like this. It's like, let's find the way that works for you and get it done. So it works.
So he took that framework and then applied what would make it best for him to review it and then provide feedback to his employees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to sit on a bike reading 10 emails.
Yeah.
It's boring. And nobody wants to send 10, nobody wants to send the same email every week.
Hmm.
So he turned it into a 3-part voice message and then a quick response from him. And he said that most of the responses take me a minute or less to do. So it's really efficient.
Yeah. When you first enter an organization, because I'm assuming you've worked with a lot of different types of organizations, how do you get into the source of the friction, instead of just fixing the most visible symptom of the problem?
I think there's a couple of things. Number one, before we engage in any doing,
Mm.
we do a fair amount of diagnostic work. So whether that's sending, assessment type stuff to the people who are going to be involved in the work that we're doing, I also make a point to meet the executives in the business. So essentially, these are our sponsors of the organization or of the piece of work, and we're really gauging before we sign any contracts. We're gauging their commitment to actually doing this
Hmm.
effectively, because oftentimes you'll hear an exec saying, oh, leadership is really important in our business, and we want everybody to be engaged, and then all of their behaviors are the exact opposite.
Hmm.
I know you have to deliver at any cost, our numbers are non-negotiable, blah blah blah. So what we're trying to achieve here is checking whether this exec is on board, whether people and leadership is a priority in this organization. And if
Hmm.
so, then we can move into our sort of, what are the actual problems. But often when you talk to the executive, you're looking for patterns. So it's the same in anything really. When you get a 360 feedback report,
Hmm.
you're looking for patterns in the data. The same thing when we talk to the execs. What are the things that keep coming up as issues? Often I'll ask questions like, what are the challenges getting in the way of this business performing better? Or, if you were the CEO, what would you be working on? And is that different to what you're currently working on? So
Hmm.
we're trying to we want and this isn't to undermine anybody or to get knowledge that's going to diminish anybody's capability or profile.
Yeah.
It's to see the patterns. And let's say, for example, we seem to spend a lot of time in meetings. That's a friction point.
Hmm.
Or we're just juggling balls or juggling fire all the time. That's a pattern. So we look for those types of statements in the language that's used, and we use AI to help us go through that data. But it generally, I think I mentioned to you earlier, we've got 42 of these.
Hmm.
Everybody's got sort of 10 to 15, and there's about 6 that always come up. And they're often the same. So we have an inkling the type of organization that's going to partner with us is probably going to have those types of problems.
Hmm.
But we can uncover which of the 42 is there by those conversations.
Okay. I also want to ask about your book, Beat Burnout, Ignite Performance.
Mm.
So it treats burnout as more than a personal wellness issue, but you describe it as something that affects decisions, ownership, and how work gets done. What does burnout look like before someone reaches a complete breaking point?
Yeah, this is interesting. I don't know if are you familiar with the Coriolis effect?
I am
When
not.
when you pull the plug out the bath and you get the little whirlpool.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So the whirlpool, the Coriolis effect. Imagine you're a rubber ducky in the bath, and rubber ducky's swimming away quite merrily in the bath, and when it hits the edge of the whirlpool, the water's moving really slowly, and rubber ducky can quite easily swim away. But as time goes on, the water starts to speed up,
Mhm.
and then eventually rubber ducky can't escape
Yeah.
and gets sucked down into the whirlpool. And burnout's very similar. When you are in the initial stages of it, um, a 2-week vacation will help a lot. Shutting your laptop at 5 o'clock will help a lot. When you're in the later stages of it, it's kind of like being in a quagmire. It's really hard to get out of that whirlpool because it's moving faster than you can deal with, which
Hmm.
leads to a cascade of reactiveness, poor decision making because you're on the back foot all the time, diminished relationships. All sorts of things start to happen.
Hmm.
So what we did was we tried to sort of give people an easy way to identify, a playbook way of identifying burnout in themselves and others. And we used the vowels AEIOU to make it easy. So A is anxiety. So if you're on the path to burnout, often what you see is in the mornings when you wake up, you're like, oh, I've got to go to work today. I don't want to do that. Or Sunday night, you get that feeling in your stomach, a bit nauseous, worrying about that meeting or worrying about the workload. And so that's one of the signs that we look for initially. Second one is exhaustion. I just don't have any gas in the tank.
Hmm.
I remember I was working before I burned out. I was working 18 to 20-hour days consistently for 2.5 years, and I would wake up in the morning, and it would take me 2 bottles of Coke, Coke Zero, a litre worth of Coke Zero to get going. Just needed caffeine,
Hmm.
and I lived on sugar and lived on Mars bars and the like. There are other chocolate bars you can have, of course. But I was definitely kind of addicted to fueling with stimulants to keep going.
Hmm.
And you see people taking Adderall and Ritalin and all sorts of other things to just fuel the energy because they're utterly exhausted all the time.
Hmm.
Um, I is all about isolation. So you find people who are on the road to burnout, they pull back from the team. They just leave me alone. I just need to get on with this. They go and lock themselves in a room, disappear. They pull back from relationships. They
Hmm.
pull back from their friends. They stop going to social events. So they're isolating themselves. O is overwhelm. If you see somebody who's on the track to burnout and you give them one more thing, they're like, "Oh my god, how am I going to do this one more thing? Oh my god, I just don't know how I'm going to cope." And you see these little
Hmm.
outbursts from people, and then the final kind of nail in the coffin is U, which is uncaring. So generally, we see burnout actually affect our most motivated, most committed, most passionate employees because they're giving everything they've got to this job.
Hmm.
And so when you see them going, yeah, whatever, I'm done. I'm going to go home now, or I don't, I'm going to miss a deadline because I just don't care anymore. I haven't got enough in me to care.
Yeah.
Um, That's the final sort of sign and symptom. So if you're a manager and you're seeing somebody in your team exhibiting two or more of those, it's time for a conversation. If you're listening and you see two or more of those in you, it's time to maybe do the bottleneck assessment and find out if you're maybe causing some of this yourself. And the other piece that probably is worth mentioning is we do a really good job of justifying when we're on the road to burnout. And justifying is I'll just work a bit late tonight because I've got some stuff to do,
Hmm.
or I'll just turn my laptop on Sunday so I can clear the decks, or I'll just do this because it's quicker for me to do it than to give it to my team. I'll just do this because I'm better at anybody else than anybody else at doing it.
Hmm.
I'll just skip the gym because I'm busy. I'll just grab a takeaway on the way home because I'm too tired to cook. I'll just have a glass of wine, to take the edge off. It's been a long day. I'll just finish the bottle. And this justifying that we don't go through, if you find yourself saying that, then again, you're rubber ducky on the edge of the whirlpool, and you need
Hmm.
to stop justifying and you need to start changing your behaviors. Otherwise, you could end up burning out.
Yeah, and whether it's justifying or some advice tells people just to become more resilient. But what you talk about is that people need to remove some of that weight instead of becoming better at carrying it or justifying it. So how do we know when resilience is no longer the answer?
It's such a hard thing to know.
Hmm.
I think resilience has been HRified and overcomplicated in many organizations, and I think it's often misinterpreted as well. We use the example of trees. Uh, when I live in Baja California, Mexico, and before I lived there, I lived in New Zealand. New Zealand's full of pine trees and big oak trees and these really large trees that when a big storm comes through, the tree can resist this wind and resist this storm, and until it can't, eventually there's going to be a big storm that will crack that tree, will bring it
Hmm.
down. In Mexico, there's loads of palm trees, and we get hurricanes all the time. We're in hurricane season now. But when a hurricane comes through, palm trees bend and then they come back. And I think resilience is much more like that. Most people in organizations, they get they have an inappropriate definition of what resilience is. You need to be a big, strong tree who can resist all the wind.
Hmm.
And all of the training is how do we make you stronger as a tree? Also, it's a failure to break. So people resist even more. And we get inappropriate tactics to do that. Let's meditate our way to being resilient. Let's
Hmm.
yoga our way to being resilient. Let's get pizza parties and to try and be more resilient. Let's all sit in a room and share graphic details about ourselves in the hope of building trust so we can be more resilient. These things don't work. What we need to do is teach people to be palm trees, to bend in the storm, and to reserve enough energy and capability to be able to bounce back, to be
Hmm.
able to deal with the situation once the storm has passed. And often that can mean looking at your capacity and turning some stuff off or delaying it or pushing it out for another quarter. Often that can mean not chasing that goal because actually standing up to the resistance that goal is creating is part of what's causing the problem. And so going, well, hold on, there's a lot of friction here. Let's solve for that. And maybe the friction here is this is one too many priorities. Maybe the friction here is actually we're not really clear on what we're meant to be doing.
Hmm.
So we're all kind of going off in different directions and making decisions, and those decisions are having a consequential effect on each other. The system is being pulled in multiple directions, and it's kind of like having all of your team in a rowing boat facing in opposite directions, pulling as hard as they can. The
Hmm.
boat's not going anywhere, or it's going in circles. So the resilience there is actually maybe this isn't the right thing to do. Maybe we need to stop, take a moment to think about what's really going on, bend the way we're approaching this, and that'll allow us to come back. And I think that's where resilience is misinterpreted and changed. And I don't think it's not the solution. I think
Hmm.
sometimes thinking about it differently is the most important piece.
So instead of keep pushing through and just in going and justifying, take take the step back and identify: do I need to keep going? Do I need to delegate? Do I need to stop something?
Yeah, I mean, we have a framework we use called PVC. which is essentially where do I put my time and energy when everything's urgent and important. And P is purpose. Why are we doing this, and why do I need to be involved? V is how valuable is this versus that, and is this valuable for my time versus somebody else's? C is all about capacity. Can we squeeze this in, or am I already at my 40 hours a week that I work? And if so, is this more important than all the things I'm working on, or any of the things I'm working on? And I can swap them out. And so we have three responses. I stop something, I slow something down, or I swap something. And the resilient approach here is I cannot just add one more thing, because every time I do that, I diminish my recovery time. And we know that growth and high performance comes from stress plus rest. It doesn't come from stress plus stress. And if you think about this, from an athlete perspective, an athlete doesn't run in the Olympics every day. They don't run a race every day. They train, they rest, and they perform. But for some reason in business, we just we're running for Olympic gold every day of our lives. And that doesn't work. You get exhausted, you get injuries, and your business gets injured as well. So we want stress plus rest. Push hard, and then if you're realizing the stress is too much, rest. They teach the same thing in the military. When the bombs and the bullets start flying, notionally, your officers are taught to sit down and make a cup of tea and look at the battlefield. Because you're taking that helicopter view, or taking the condor moment, as they call it in the military. But it's zoom out of the situation and go, are we doing the right thing here? Is this the right approach? And it's so easy when you're somebody who is a high focused delivery person, which, let's face it, the reason you're probably in a senior management role or a mid-management role is because you're really good at getting stuff done. And that's how you got promoted. So the inclination is to keep going by getting stuff done. And actually the job changes. And so you're not the principal violinist anymore. You're the conductor of the orchestra. And so it's zooming out and going, this seems to be causing a lot of friction for our team. This is really hurting us. People are exhausted. I'm exhausted. Are we doing the right thing? Should we stop? Should we swap? Should we slow something down? Should we go back to the drawing board and just go, are we solving the right problem in the right way? Why are we doing this? And generally having that conversation with a bunch of experts, if we go right back to the start of our episode, and getting the right people in the room to talk this through, so it's not all on your shoulders to do, is a great way to go, actually, do you know what? We're going down a rabbit hole here we don't need to go down, or we've overcomplicated this, or we haven't got clarity in what we're doing, or people aren't on board with this. Let's do that. Then the friction drops away. Then our resilience comes back up.
Yeah. I also want to talk about your AI work. So you've built an AI coaching platform. And as we think about and learn about AI taking more reporting and scheduling and some of the administration tasks away, what will leaders need to become better at?
I think the most important and the most simple thing is leaders need to become better at where they put their time. The stem of this whole conversation is most managers are involved in too much stuff. They're overcommitted, and the danger with AI is it's just another thing that we add on top. Look, you've all got an AI platform to do reporting. Look, you've now got another AI platform to be a chatbot. Look, you've got another AI platform to do product strategy. And managers just having to absorb and integrate all this stuff without any real support. And there's a danger there that they're already overcommitted. They'll continue to be overcommitted. And, all the signs are pointing to that. If you look at the Gallup engagement data, you look at leadership confidence data, trust in my leader data, there's a whole lot of bad news that's becoming very, very real. So I think leaders, and this is the core of the work we do, leaders need to become a lot better at choosing where they're putting their time and energy. And they also need to become a lot better at getting the right help for how to implement AI into their organizations. People, I think, are a little bit scared of AI as well, that it's going to take my job. I don't think it will. I think AI is going to do two things. Number one, it's going to force you to elevate the value of the work that you're working on, because the basic stuff will get done by the AI. There's heaps of, a couple of clients we're working with at the moment. One's a legal firm, and they're saying, well, we don't really need junior lawyers anymore. because they're, the basic case work and the research work that junior lawyers used to do, an AI now does it in 5 minutes. There's a danger there, because in 15 years' time, all those senior lawyers will have retired, and there'll be no people to be
Yep.
senior lawyers, because the AI has taken over that part. But right now, those senior lawyers are able to work on the high value stuff, and they don't need the junior lawyers, or the junior lawyers that they've got can be trained on higher value work. So it's the value of work will increase. Equally, I think legal firms that don't adopt AI will be beaten by legal firms that do adopt AI. So the consideration there is you won't lose your job to AI, you lose your job to somebody who's using AI. So managers need to start understanding what AI is, what it can do. And even if, you just sit at home and play with Claude or play with ChatGPT or whatever it is, get your head around what it can do. Most people use AI like a chatbot, or a chatbot version of Google. They Google something, how do I make a cake? And then it gives you the recipe. It's so much more powerful than that if you get your head around how it works. And so that's really where our AI platform came from, Aiden came from. It's an AI performance enhancement tool. So it's well beyond coaching. The idea of it is everybody can have a coach in their pocket. So if you're in that moment where Jimmy's turned up to work late 3 times in a row, and I need to have a bit of help of how am I going to have that conversation with Jimmy, Aiden will help you get ready for that conversation. But it's so much more than that, because it will read lots of data signs that sit around you and your daily operating rhythm. So each day it asks you to check in for 30 seconds. How are you feeling? How's your stress levels? How's your well-being? And it tracks that data. And then it looks for the patterns in the data. So it will say things like, oh, Christina, it's Wednesday. And you always seem to report that you're a bit down on Wednesdays. So would you like a coaching session about that? But you can go further. You can connect your Microsoft Teams to it if you want. So it's now looking at your calendar load. It's looking at your emails and your chats. And it will say, oh, Christina, your Apple Health data says that you haven't slept well for the last 3 nights. And I just noticed the email tone is a little bit off. Should we have a conversation about that? Oh, and by the way, you're pretty overcommitted next Thursday on meetings. So should we use the get rid of meetings tool playbook to get that sorted for you? And by the way, I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but this article is a really interesting article for people who are struggling with their sleep. So it feeds that to you specifically. Then what it does, it says, Christina, you've got a group of people in your team who are also using Aiden. And what I've noticed is that 3 or 4 of them are struggling with clarity. So here's a thing that you could do, an exercise you could do with your team to make them more clear. And then organizationally, somebody in HR can go, oh, it seems that a lot of people are really struggling with resilience right now. So why don't we put together a resilience package? Because the system aggregates all of the data of all of the people and says, oh, there's a resilience problem in your business. So L&D, I recommend you start rolling out a resilience program. Here's what that might look like. At the same time, Christina, what are you working on this quarter? What's important for you? Let's set some goals. How are those goals going? Would you like some help to break them down into action steps? Where are you at with that? So you can see how it starts to sort of take all of this aggregated data from all over the place in your life and use it to help you perform better. And that's the key to it, is it's not just a chat bot, which you can do on ChatGPT, but it remembers everything. It remembers you and it builds a relationship with you. Initially, it plays nice to get to know you better. And then it will start to be a bit pushier. Hey, you haven't done any work on your goals for 6 months. Like, time to start doing something if you want to see a difference. Here, you're not making much progress, or your well-being is really down. Time to start looking at your lifestyle. It'll push you a little bit more overtly. And it's got 13 different coaching methodologies built into it. So it will work out pretty quickly from the way you respond to it. What do you need? Do you need a Socratic method? Do you need a grow method? Do you need a bit more mentoring than coaching? And so on and so on. So it's very, very intelligent, very artificially intelligent, but it's very intelligent.
But it also takes a holistic approach and then is proactive in suggestions on what areas need a little bit of improvement or adjustment.
Yeah, it's calling out poor performance, but in a helpful way that encourages you to want to do those changes, because
Hmm.
it's got my brain inside it essentially, but
Hmm.
it's going, well, where's the friction here? Let's solve for that,
Hmm.
and everything else will get better and easier.
Yeah. So I want to move into a fun lightning round, quick question answers.
Okay.
Um, what is one military habit you still use almost every day?
You don't need to be the expert.
What is one corporate phrase you would ban permanently?
Let's put a pin in that.
Yeah. Which would
All of
you
those, the business, I want to say business horse poo. I
Yeah.
can't swear on the podcast, but you know what I mean? Like all those little phrases. Let's loop back to it. Let's take it
Oh,
off.
yeah.
Like, I hate all that stuff.
Table it, circle back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there just one that you would ban or all of them?
Oh god, I think let's take that offline, because it means
Mm-hmm.
that it's both dismissive of the person who
Mm-hmm.
said it, and also it means that we're not working on the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Which would you eliminate first? The status meeting, the reply all email, or the 50-slide presentation?
Oh god. Well, we don't use PowerPoint at all, so it'll be the slide presentation.
What is one task you will almost always delegate?
If I think about what I do always delegate, I have a phenomenal team who help me. But one of the things I've learned to delegate is all of the publishing of all the stuff that we
Mm-hmm.
send out. So newsletters, blogs, social media. I used to be across all of that stuff, and now my job is to write it
Mm-hmm.
and then send it to somebody, and then magic happens. And lo and behold, it ends up in front of 15,000 people. So
Mm-hmm.
that is something I would always delegate, because it's not worth. I don't want to diminish their job, but my high value work is doing the work that only I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can teach anybody within reason to publish something on Buffer, or to put something into Facebook, or to send a newsletter out by our newsletter platform.
Yeah.
So it's much better that I delegate that, and that would be the same advice for when we look at the PVC model, the value of my time and the value of this, and
Mm-hmm.
this work that only I can do, versus that somebody can be relatively easy trained to do, and then it gets it off my plate. So that's the stuff I always delegate.
Okay. And when your brain will not switch off, what helps you?
Scuba diving, I
Okay.
absolutely love. It's definitely my meditation. Running,
Mhm.
although as I get older and slower, it gets actually more frustrating than
Yeah.
it used to be when I was younger and faster. And now I'm really bad at playing golf, and slowly getting better. So that's become a new kind of way to switch off, is change the challenge, and go and play terrible golf for a couple of hours,
Okay.
rather than not. And then probably the other one is cooking. I
Okay.
love just chucking stuff in a pan and seeing what happens.
Mhm.
That's one of my lifelong passions, and I've taken cooking classes all over the world and done that. So yeah, I have a variety of methods, and I have to admit also to probably a bit of a guilty pleasure on watching TV series
Mm.
as well.
Okay. What is something people are usually surprised to learn about you?
Surprised. A lot of people are quite surprised to know that I was in the army.
Mhm.
I think, I don't necessarily portray as a ex-military person. Maybe I do. I
Mhm.
don't know. But a lot of people are like, "Oh, really? You're in the army? That's amazing." And it's a surprise.
Yeah.
Um, I think the other thing probably people are quite surprised at is, I'm actually, when I'm not working, I'm extremely lazy. It's like I'm quite happy to have like a full day in bed watching movies when I'm
Mhm.
not on. I'm either all on or all off,
Yeah.
which is probably why I burned out in many years ago.
Mhm.
But I just try and intersperse those all off moments on a daily basis now. So I'm like, I work really hard and then I'm off,
Yeah.
and that helps. But I think people are quite surprised, because I seem quite high energy and
Mhm.
extroverted, and I'm actually very not. I'm low
Mhm.
energy and introverted. But that's the surprise, I suppose.
Yeah. Taking that time to recover.
Hmm.
Yeah. And as you look back in your early career, what is some advice that you would give yourself as you were getting started in this?
Oh, God, that's an easy one. Don't take yourself so seriously.
Mhm.
I think, I mentioned to you, my crusade was to be the CEO of an organization.
Mhm.
My mission before that was to become the colonel of a regiment. And so everything was like super focused, super fixated on how can I do the perfect job to get the promotions, to get the accolade, to get the recognition so I can move up and do a harder job.
Hmm.
And actually, do you know what? When you're in your 20s and probably even into your mid 30s, just learn some cool lessons and make some mistakes and get the basics, because magically, when you hit kind of mid manager and above, all of those mistakes that you made start to kind of form into an experience base.
Yeah.
And so being braver on screwing up
Hmm.
and not taking yourself to be the perfectionist and taking yourself so seriously is such a valuable thing to do, because it means you graze your knees
Hmm.
early in your career so you
Yeah.
don't break your legs later. So yeah, my advice would be don't take yourself so seriously.
Okay. And if someone is listening and wants to reach out to you, where's the best place they can find you?
Go to jblhighperformance.com
Okay.
and yeah, grab one of our assessments that will trigger that. We'll know that you're interested in what we do. Have a look at we've got a contact form on the website as well, but that's probably the best place to find me is jblhighperformance.com.
All right. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate it.
No, most welcome. Thank you for asking such challenging questions. I've had to work hard today.
Thanks. And thank you for listening to TriPoint Conversations. Thanks for listening to TriPoint Conversations. Make sure you hit subscribe wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with a friend or someone who's navigating their own next chapter. And if you know a story that deserves to be heard, or maybe that story is yours, head to tripointstrategicgroup.com and send me a note. I can't wait to keep this journey going with you and introduce you to more incredible people who are shaping their communities one story at a time.